Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we talk about the 10 best horror movies from 2024 that you might have missed. And real quick, before we get into this, I'm trying to reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year. It's been a dream of mine since I started this channel almost 5 years ago. And I know it really doesn't matter a whole lot, but for me personally, it's a big deal. So the best way you can help out is just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and that you have that little bell icon ringed. Also, if you could share it on your social media, that would help a ton as well. Either way, I just want to give a big thank you to all you guys for all your support. It really does mean a lot to me. And with that, let's get to the list.
Everyone must know he's here.
Daddy's Head is a 2024 horror movie, written and directed by Benjamin Barfoot. It stars Rupert Turnbull, Julia Brown, and Charles Aiken. A boy and his stepmother fear for their safety after an eerie creature resembling the boy's recently deceased father visits them.
Isaac.
Dad?
Come to the forest.
This is a very creepy, small movie. It is very small, but it's also beautifully shot and well performed by this cast. It's one of those movies that does deal with mourning and grief and depression and sadness and all of those dour type of emotions. And I know I've heard a lot of people of late saying that they're kind of tired of that. It's overly used, this gloomy kind of horror. And I get that. But I still feel like, just like with any type of horror movie, if it's done right, if it's performed well, if it's written and casted right, and all those things are put together in the correct way, it still can be a really good movie, and I think it's worth seeing. And that's the case here. I really enjoyed this movie, and it just came and went. Like a lot of movies that go to Shudder, not a ton of people talk about them because they don't get to theaters. They just kind of come and go, and that's the end of it. And after October was over, I didn't hear anyone talk about this movie at all. And I think it's a real shame because yes, this deals with a lot of those things that I was talking about, and like we've seen a lot of other movies dealing with, but I feel like it deals with it in a little bit of a different way and comes at it from a slightly different angle that gave it some fresh legs, that gave it something interesting to kind of add to the conversation, so to speak. Beyond that, the creature type of element, super creepy and interesting and not exactly like what you're expecting and not like a lot of other things we've seen done before. Now, I'm not saying this is a game changer, so don't get me wrong. Like I said, it is a very small movie. And I think as long as you go into this with the right expectations and just look to be entertained, you'll be pleasantly surprised. Sunrise is a 2024 horror movie. Directed by Andrew Bard, it stars Guy Pearce, Alex Pettyfer, and Crystal Yu. A man roams the land as a creature of the night as he comes to terms with the tragic loss of his family at the hands of a brutal demigod.
What if he's the red coat?
And you know what he feeds on?
What?
Fear.
This is another one that absolutely nobody has been talking about. And I understand it's not a perfect movie. It's definitely flawed in ways and also deals with some things that we've seen kind of done quite a bit. So like I said, with Daddy's Head, it's not necessarily a game changer. It's not that kind of movie. But I really enjoyed this, and I think a lot of it is the performance here because I'm always a fan of Guy Pearce. Everything he does, he really puts everything into it. And that's the case here. I mean, he really brings it with this role. But I also liked the different wrinkles and things that this does that feel fresh and different than a lot of other movies that kind of have a similar feel to this, which is also why I'm being coy and not saying exactly what this movie is, because a lot of people have come away thinking it's one thing, but if you look a little bit deeper, I feel like there's a little more to it than maybe you're thinking on the surface. The different lore and spin that it puts on it is what I felt make this worth seeing. It also has some really cool atmosphere to it and location, the way that it's all shot. There's a lot of forest and beautiful landscapes and stuff, but there's some creepy, foggy things that gave it an extra layer of creepiness. So I think if you're in the mood for a supernatural horror movie that has a bit of a grounded, realistic kind of feel to it, this is a good one to check out. Love Lies Bleeding is a 2024 action thriller. Directed by Rose Glass, it stars Kristen Stewart, Katie O'Brien, and Ed Harris. The story's about a gym manager who falls for a bodybuilder passing through town, en route to a competition in Las Vegas.
A bit more powerful than a punch, huh?
Fuck yeah.
Call me when it's done.
So if you're not familiar with Rose Glass, that's the filmmaker who made Saint Maud, which is a movie that in 2022, I think it was when it was released, I was floored by. I think that movie is so special. But this is her second movie, and it is less horror. It doesn't deal with the dread kind of qualities and religious stuff and all of the things that Saint Maud did. But I do still feel like there is enough of a horror edge to this, and definitely some horrific elements about it. Some scenes and things that it deals with that's pretty damn creepy. For one, Ed Harris is just so menacing and such a villain. He's so good in that type of role, and he absolutely kills it here. It's also pretty fucking gory. I mean, there are some scenes in this that make me wince and definitely stuck with me long after I had seen it, which was something I really appreciated about Saint Maud as well. But this is one of the more artsy, art house type of movies that A24 has done in the last few years. So this won't work for everyone. But it isn't really a slow burn either. It's definitely a psychological thriller and deals with some really weird, twisted mental things. But especially in the end, it just goes off the deep end and will make you question what is exactly going on. But like a lot of artsy kind of movies, it's more about the metaphor of what things are, not exactly what they are in reality. So there's a bit of surrealism in this. It isn't all taken on face value. But if you're in the mood for a twisted psychological thriller, this is a fantastic one to check out. What You Wish For is a 2023 horror movie. Written and directed by Nicholas Tomney, it stars Nick Stahl, Thompson Topolsky, and Randy Vasquez. A down-on-his-luck chef with gambling problems flees to a Latin American villa where he assumes the identity of another man. I really appreciate and enjoy a lot of the work that Nick Stahl has been doing the last few years. I feel like he's one of those very underrated actors that I hope to see more and more of, and hopefully he'll get some bigger roles because he really commits himself and just puts all he has into every one of the roles I've seen him in, and yet they're all just these tiny movies that just don't get recognized. And that's the case with this one because I really enjoyed this movie. It's another one of those movies where I understand why it didn't get more publicity because it is a pretty small indie movie and it's kind of limited in its scope. But I do really like the story that it tells and some of the twists and turns that it takes. But it's also one I got to be really careful to not say much because it's a lot more fun if you go into this mostly blind. Because it pretty early on takes some dramatic twists and turns that make for a really good time if you don't see them coming. But it gets pretty twisted, pretty fucked up and grisly as well. It also has some pretty black, twisted humor that if you're a hardcore horror fan, I think you'll have a laugh with as well. But it's not a comedy by any means. It's definitely a horror movie. And as it goes, it gets more and more creepy and demented because it does a good job of kind of putting you into this situation and making you think about what would I do if I was in this guy's shoes. And I've heard a number of people calling it the poor man's The Menu. And I don't think it's that at all. It's a very different premise. But without spoiling it, I can't exactly tell you why that is. But I think this is a fantastic, underappreciated movie that's definitely worth checking out. Out of Darkness is a 2022 British horror thriller. Directed by Andrew Cummings in his feature-length debut, it stars Sophia Oakley-Green and Chuku Maru. In the Stone Age, a desperate group of early humans band together in search for new land. But when they suspect a malevolent mystical being is hunting them, the clan are forced to confront a danger they never envisioned. So I've talked about this one a number of times. It was in a couple of my tops of the year videos because I just think this movie's special, but I also understand why it didn't work for everyone. Because if you go into this just expecting a horror movie, you're probably going to be disappointed because this, in a lot of ways, feels like something made by National Geographic with a horror twist. I mean, there's definitely some horror, creepy elements to it, but it does have a twist to it. So it's not exactly what you think it is on the surface. And it gets a little more artsy, a little more cerebral, a little bit of that, makes you think after you've seen it kind of movie than just like a creature feature or a supernatural horror movie. I've also seen quite a few people that pick it apart and say, oh, those haircuts aren't accurate or whatever. Man, if you pick apart movies like that, you're probably not going to enjoy a lot of movies. I think it's a movie, though, that if you go into it and just embrace it and appreciate it for what it is and what it's trying to say, it's definitely enjoyable. At the end of the day, just like all art, if you're open to it and embrace it for what it is, most of the time you're going to come away having a lot better of a time than if you're closed arms like that and waiting to be won over. So that's just how I watch movies in general. I try to go in and give them the benefit of the doubt, enjoy what there is to enjoy that's there. And of course, there's going to be times where there'll be things that I don't enjoy or movies in general that I'm not a big fan of. But I think more times than not, I come away at least having somewhat been entertained by most movies. And I know I get a lot of criticism for that, but that's just me. It's just how I see movies. So as long as you don't have an overly critical eye, I think this will definitely be worth your time. Let's rock and roll.
Stop. Just be cool. And don't murder anyone else.
Destroy All Neighbors is a 2024 comedy horror movie. Directed by Josh Forbes, it stars Alex Winter, Jonah Ray, and Kieran Deol. A struggling prog rock musician finds himself in a living nightmare when he accidentally kills the neighbor from hell.
Headed into chaos.
What?
Blood will be spilt.
You gotta stand on your own 2 feet and say, "Get out of my kitchen, cause I'm cooking!"
This movie is an absolute blast. It is silly, super over the top, very gory and campy and just goofy, but God, is it a good time. It's one of those movies that I laughed throughout from beginning to the very end. For one, I grew up in bands, either around them or in them since I was pretty young, up until really just a few years ago. And to this day, a lot of my best friends are still in music, or at the very least, still tinker around with playing music. And so that's kind of the world I come from. And this movie really lives in a lot of those jokes and a lot of that type of way of thinking. And so there's so many kind of inside jokes to musicians that if you're not a musician, you might not quite get, but I think most of this will still play well for any fan of horror comedy. But it's not scary or anything to take serious. It's just a goofy, gory, over the top good time.
Got a surprise for you.
Milk and Cereal is a 2024 found footage horror movie. Written and directed by Curry Barker. It stars Cooper Tomlinson, Curry Barker, and Adley Alvarado. A surprise birthday prank takes a turn for the worse when a popular social media duo must face the reality of the terrifying aftermath.
What the fuck?
This movie just blows my mind. It never ceases to impress me and amaze me how creative and imaginative and talented so many young people in this world are. And for everybody that just talks about how the youth of the country is just sitting around on social media all day and not making art, not doing this or that, you just need to take a look around because they're just doing things in a different way. Like this, for instance. 20 years ago, this could not exist. This group of friends could not have made a competent, well-done, creepy, imaginative movie. I mean, this is a full-on movie, and they made it themselves and also put it on their own YouTube channel and got a shit ton of views and notoriety and all that from it. It's just amazing. It's a beautiful time to be a creative filmmaker in this world. But just like any other time in history, you have to be okay with the technology and embrace the technology of the time and what tools are at your disposal. It's just like with AI. I say this all the time. I am not a huge fan of people that take AI and have it make all these creations and then sell it like it's their own or whatever. Not a fan of that. So I'm not supporting AI in that regard. What I am saying is AI, just like Photoshop was 20 years ago or any other form of technology, is just a tool. And if it's used correctly by creative minds, it can unlock and open up doors for a whole different way of creating things. But I'm getting sidetracked. There is no AI in this movie. I'm just simply talking about the fact that they were able to record this with their phones, edit it on their own computers, put it out on their own YouTube channel and all of that. There's no AI here though, so don't get that twisted. I didn't mean for it to sound that way. I'm just talking about embracing technology and how it's easy to get afraid and scared of what is cutting edge. If you embrace technology and use it as a tool, you can do amazing things still with it. But man, this movie is creative. It's well written. The dialogue is great. It feels very real. And that's one of those things that really pulls you into it because it feels so authentic. It feels so real because this is a group of real friends that made this movie. But just when you think you got a beat on where this movie's going and what it's doing, it just has another wrinkle, another twist, and continues to keep you guessing throughout the entire movie. But it's one of the more fresh, imaginative, creative found footage movies that I've seen in quite a while and just makes me so excited and optimistic for the bright future that's ahead for all the creative minds that are in the world right now. So if you've yet to see Milk and Cereal, it's available to stream for free on YouTube, and it's one that I highly recommend.
I'm gonna make this slow.
Help me! Run! All y'all are monsters!
Lowlifes is a 2024 black comedy horror movie. Directed by Tesh Gudakanda, it stars Amanda Fix, Matthew McCall, and Brenda Llewellyn. The survival instincts of a road-tripping family are put to the test when they have no other choice but to stay the night at a remote homestead.
We got gas, honey!
You folks will probably want to leave first thing in the morning.
It's cozy. Don't let the bed bugs bite.
This was one of the biggest surprises of last year for me. It was right up there with Milk and Cereal because I had no expectations going into this. And for honestly the first 10 minutes or so of this, I was like, man, I do not feel like watching this. This is a recommendation that is just not going to be my jam, not my cup of tea, because the acting, everything feels campy and cheesy, but in like a really low budget movie way that just doesn't work. It just doesn't sell for me. But I'm so glad I hung in there and stayed with it because it takes a twist, you know, about 10, 15 minutes in, and instead of being predictable and and going the directions and doing all the things that I thought it was going to do, it completely caught me off guard and was an absolute thrill ride from that moment forward. It's also full of some black, twisted, macabre humor. Now, I wouldn't call it a comedy per se, though. It is much more horror than that and has slasher elements to it and things like that. So it's not like a comedy where you're going to be laughing out loud the entire movie, but there's just an overall twisted sense of humor about it. And I didn't know going in that it was directed by Tesh Kudakonda, or I would have probably expected more from it. And so it's kind of nice having those lowered expectations. But Tesh Kudakonda did another one of my really favorite movies from the last few years, and that's the movie Influencer. But that's another one of those that really messes with your head and keeps you guessing and is a very fun ride in and of itself. But I think this movie is a lot of fun, it's very entertaining, and absolutely deserves a spot on your list. Mads is a 2024 French horror movie. Directed by David Moreau, it stars Lucille Guillemette, Laurie Pavey, and Milton Reach. A teenager who stops off to see his dealer to test a new drug before heading out for a night of partying. But on his way back, he picks up an injured woman and the night takes a surreal turn. This is one that is kind of like nothing else you've really ever seen. There's a lot of imaginative, creative, unique ways in the way this movie is put together because it's all one continuous take, the entire movie. And I didn't even believe it. I thought, nah, there's no way. There was definitely some hidden cuts, but no, when I looked into it, it genuinely is one continuous take. They did it a number of times and then went with the best version. And that's it. And it is so cool because of that, because the way it just continues, it's like almost like you're handing the camera off to each character and you'll go with this character for a while and then the camera comes back around and now it's following this character and you're just always in this dance of where you're going and what you've missed and trying to pick up on clues on what exactly is going on, because with one character you might miss what's going on over here and now you got to try to pick up the pieces and try to put the pieces together and figure out what happened over there that you missed. And I've talked about this one a number of times. It was actually just on a video I did a couple weeks ago, and so I won't go into this too much, but it's a very creative, very imaginative, gorgeously shot movie. It's twisted, it's just so fun to follow, but also gets creepy, disturbing, demented, and twisted, especially by the end. But if you have yet to see Mads, do yourself a favor and make this the next thing that you watch.
And you will see his glory.
Lord of Misrule is a 2023 folk horror movie directed by William Brent Bell. It stars Tuppence Middleton, Ralph Ineson, and Evie Templeton. During a local celebration, the daughter of the town's new minister goes missing, leading to the revelation of dark secrets.
Every year we drive him out, but he stands in the fields and waits.
So this was one of my favorite movies, period, from last year. But it's one that's very much flying under the radar. Not really anybody talks about it, and it's frustrating. Now, I know because I'm a big fan of folk horror, that has something to do with it. Because unless you're a fan of folk horror, you may not think that this movie is as cool and enjoyable as I do. But I love that genre of horror so much. And anytime you can have a new wrinkle and do something a little bit different with that genre, it makes me so excited. But the way this movie's shot and the costume design, set design are just beautiful and so worth seeing. But there's one scene in particular in this movie that make it a must see in my opinion, because it's so jarring, so creepy, uncomfortable, the sound design, all the different things that they throw at you in that scene make it so memorable to me. On top of that, Ralph Ineson is incredible. And he doesn't get a chance to really shine as much as he deserves in a lot of movies because of his great voice and stuff. A lot of times he plays just the smaller bit parts. But in this one, he gets a fairly big role and really gets to kind of lean into his acting chops. And some of these scenes in this movie, he really steals the show. But I think if you're a fan of folk horror movies, this is a great one. And I just think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And I'll see you guys next time.